We are gradually emerging out of lockdown, and it's a slow and tentative process as we move on from some of the restrictions that we've been living under over the last year or so. And each week goes by, something seems to be relaxed a little bit as we move towards something like normality in the future, we hope. And one of the stories I've been reflecting on that maybe has some resonance with the time we're living through right now is the story of Noah and the flood. Now, we might have been reflecting upon that strange lockdown that Noah and his family went through, being stuck in his ark for many long months, waiting for the flood to go down, unable to go out into a rather dangerous world out there while devastation happened around them. But there's a moment towards the end of the story when it seems that the peak has gone, the flood is beginning to recede. Noah is tentatively working out what to do. He sends out the dove, and the dove comes back. He sends it out, it comes back again. He sends it out, then it comes back with an olive leaf in its mouth. And then finally, it doesn't come back at all. And it's a sign that, if you like, the peak has gone, that yes, it's not yet over. The flood is still there, but it's definitely past its peak. And he's got to work out what to do when he emerges from the ark. And there may be things in this story for us to reflect upon that help us to realize how we're to respond at this really important moment as we emerge from lockdown. Even if it's slow, even if it's tentative, even though there's not one moment when it's all over. Now, there is something in this story that is maybe an example not to follow, and that is that when Noah, one of the things he does fairly soon after emerging from the ark is to plant a vineyard, create a vat of wine, and get blind drunk. It's not something to follow, but it maybe indicates one possible way in which people will respond to this, if you like, by being so relieved that it's over that we almost forget in what's happened in the past. But there are other things in this story which I think are things that we can gain and learn from as we reflect upon what we've been through this last year. First thing that Noah does when he comes out of the ark is to gather. There's a gathering that takes place. He gathers his family, but he also gathers every living thing upon the earth. That's what the story tells us. It says, bring out with you your wife, your sons, and your sons' wives with you. But then bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. There's a gathering that takes place at this crucial moment. And maybe that's something that we need to do quite deliberately, gather people. As a church, there may be a moment at some point over the summer where we want to say to those who have maybe got out of the habit of coming to church, those who've never quite got onto online worship, to say, let's gather again, let's bring people together again in person, if you like, to restart, to reboot things from here. But wider than that, as I say, Noah doesn't just gather his own family, he gathers every living thing upon the earth. Maybe there's a sense for us as churches to be able to gather people in our wider communities, to create opportunities for people to come together, to gather again, and if you like, to connect in ways that they haven't been able to do in the past. So there's that important moment of gathering. But the second thing that Noah does when he comes out of the ark is not just to gather people, but he offers. He built an altar and he offers worship, he offers sacrifice. And that worship that he offers is always a kind of, in the Old Testament, it's always a blend of different things going on in it. And maybe one of the important things that happens in that moment of worship is gratitude. Noah expresses gratitude for having been delivered from this great trial that the earth has been through. He gives thanks to God for deliverance from this terrible thing that's happened in the world. And there's an important moment for us to grasp as we emerge from the pandemic, that we express gratitude for deliverance, gratitude for the good things that we have seen over the last year, the sacrifices of people in the NHS, the gratitude for the skill of the scientists who brought together the vaccine and made that possible in this country and across the world. A gratitude for the things that we may have learned, gratitude for relationships that have been deepened, gratitude for things we've realized that we value more than we did before. There's that really important note of gratitude that is struck at this time. Jesus tells that story of 10 lepers who were all healed, but only one comes back to give thanks. And it would be a great mistake not to take this opportunity, this moment, to express gratitude. There's a lot of studies, psychological studies and others, that have said that indicate how important gratefulness and thanksgiving is for us as human beings. And of course, one of the things we have as the church is that ability not just to be generally grateful for something, but to be grateful to someone, that we have someone to address our gratitude and our thanks. And one of the things we do as we gather people together is to give thanks, to express gratitude, which is good for us as human beings. But there's something else that happens in this moment of worship. It's not just gratitude, but there's also grieving that takes place. In the story, there's a reference to the curse of the flood, a recognition that yes, there's been deliverance, but the flood itself was a curse upon the human race. It was a curse upon the earth. There's a recognition of the pain and the lament that needs to take place. And one of the things that we need to do when we gather people is not just to express gratitude, but also to give an opportunity for grieving. Grieving at those we've lost. Grieving at the lost opportunities of the past year that we've had to let go. Grieving at the lost education for many of our young people, the mental health struggles that many people have been through. Grieving about parts of the world that are still going through the pandemic right now. We in the wealthy West may be beginning to emerge from it, but many poorer countries in the world are still right in the middle of the pandemic and the dreadful effect it's happening around the world. So there's a proper grieving that needs to take place for what has been lost and what is still being lost around the world. But there's a recognition also that the grieving and gratitude can go together. You can do both. It's not a zero-sum game. You've got to do one or the other. You can be grateful, but you can also grieve. And so there is these three things that happen. There's a gathering, there's a gratitude, and there's a grieving. But maybe as we do that, there's a fourth thing that happens. And that is that Noah is told, as he emerges from the ark, he is told to be fruitful and multiply and to fill the earth. And that's the fourth thing. There's a growing that takes place. Now that may seem a strange thing to say to Noah. Noah is one tiny family. How on earth is he going to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth? And yet somehow in the grace and the economy and the power of God, Noah's family is able to do precisely that, to grow and to fill the earth with just himself, but also the living things that he's enabled to come through this. And there's an important moment of growing at this point, growing in our understanding, our knowledge, growing in those things that we have learnt over this past year, reflecting upon it, making sure that this is a new opportunity for growth personally and corporately, growing in our love for Christ and our gratitude to him for all that he brings to us, and growing in our love and our compassion for our communities, and growing, yes, in numbers as well, as we try to find ways to invite people into the life of the church, to this crucial moment of gratitude and grieving as we gather together. And so there's a kind of confidence that's given at this moment that even though Noah is one tiny family, yes, God would be able to take him and his family and fill the earth. And this may be a moment when the church, when we gather together, it may feel we're contracted, we may be smaller than we were because some people may not be coming back. They maybe have got out of the habit of coming to church and gathering it together. But even still, this can be a moment from which the church might grow in its reach, in its wider community, that we might grow personally and corporately and in our communal life together. And so there are four words that emerge from this story: gathering, gratitude, grieving, and growing. And they may provide a bit of a guide to us at this crucial moment as we seek a way forward, as we emerge from lockdown, as we seek God's blessing upon our lives, upon our churches, and upon our communities.